As a child, I was actually allergic to pets. It was horrible. Everybody else had a pet and we didn't. My sister, who's about 10 years older than I am, always used to bring home pets, and then my parents told her she couldn't keep it and so forth. So yeah, it was kind of trying when I was younger. I think I was about 14 or 15. My sister brought a dog home. My parents ended up keeping it, and I guess I grew out of my allergies. My parents loved dogs, though. I remember waking up on a Saturday morning and going down into the kitchen and smelling a really nice breakfast, and it turned out it was for the dog, not me. So that dog's name was Tiger, and my dad had that dog probably for 16, 17 years. It was a very well cared for dog and lived a very happy life. When I first met my wife, she had a dog before we got together. I remember on our first date, I came over to her house, and I remember in her living room looking down at the floor, and this dog had literally dug a hole in the center of the kitchen floor, went straight through the linoleum, went straight through the plywood, and her brother ended up taking that dog and giving it a home after that. So when I first met my wife, she was not very interested in getting a dog. It took me probably about 2 or 3 years to get our first dog, and his name was Oliver. He was a basset hound. He lived a very long life as well. Actually, he moved down here to Wilmington with us. Oliver was a couch dog, so he did a lot of watching TV with us, and he was the best dog you could ask for. He was calm, he played, he liked everybody, he liked other dogs. He was part of the family. He was our first. My wife and I met when we both worked for a personnel agency. I was a placement coordinator for a major temp service in New Jersey. My wife ran the accounting division. After we did that, we actually followed each other to the next company. She got a job in a relocation company for a major real estate company, and I did loans for about 10 years, real estate loans. Years later, I ended up running the fundraising organization for 11th Hour out of Morris County, New Jersey. The group that runs the organization, we're very open with allowing you to really plan things to make more money. The more money we had, the more dogs we could save. We still deal with them today, actually. They take the majority of all the dogs that we save here in North Carolina. We transport them to New Jersey. They have a foster program that's second to none. They probably have about 400 foster volunteers. It was my wife who initially started volunteering through them. She wanted to go and walk the dogs. I soon started to volunteer with that organization shortly afterwards. And my job, I remember this to this day, my first job volunteering with this rescue organization, they paid someone to feed the dogs Monday through Friday. But on the weekends, they just had volunteers go in and do it. And I remember, this might sound like a horrible story, but I remember going to feed them the one night. One of the dogs jumped up on me and got a little piece of poop on my leg. I thought it was the end of the world. Fast forward 5 years later into the rescue industry, if you don't have poop slathered up your leg, I mean, you're not doing it right. Gio came from a shelter in Kentucky. He was probably one of the many hunting dogs that was just left to roam because when he heard a gunshot, he probably ran. That happens quite often in the hunting industry. So as he was let to roam, a rescue had picked him up and transferred him to our rescue in New Jersey. He didn't have a lot of interest in adopters, and he wasn't being fostered at the time. So I brought him home. And my wife was probably a little mad at me that next day. But let me tell you, my wife is one that once you get the dog into the house, that dog's not going anywhere. So we quickly had a second dog, and Oliver and Gio played nice together, and we're basically just couch dogs that laid around quite a bit. I mean, the one thing about Gio was he was a big dog. He was probably about 60 pounds, and he was scared of everything. Everything. You know that hose that comes out of the sink? We could never use that because he was just so freaked out every time you'd walk past it. I remember one Halloween, we had decorated the house and we bought one of those electronic figures that like sings and moves its hands and arms. Oh, he would sit there and he would think it was a real person. Sadly, we only had Gio for about 9 months. He was being treated for heartworm disease, a parasitic infection in the heart that takes a treatment, which basically means you inject poison into the dog's body to kill the worms. It's a fairly common disease in North Carolina amongst rescue dogs. I would say probably a good 50% of dogs that we rescue are heartworm positive. It's totally preventable by giving a dog a heartworm preventative, which costs dollars per month. If most people could give their dog this heartworm preventative, we'd wipe out heartworm disease. Even after he was treated for the disease, he became pretty lethargic. And when we took him to the hospital and had a full body scan done of him, it turned out he had a cancerous mass on his lung. We had taken him for surgery, and unfortunately the surgery was unsuccessful. So he lived out his last days in our home. We wanted to form an organization afterwards to kind of memorialize him and what a great member of the family he was for us. When we first moved to North Carolina, I saw a dog in one of the rescues about an hour north of here. His name was Rebel. He was a little hound dog. He had a sight problem. He could see movement, but he was, for the most part, blind. I called the rescue, and as part of the first dog that we ever saved through the Geo Fund, we saved Rebel. We brought him into our home. He played with our current dogs, and he ended up going to 11th Hour Rescue in New Jersey, and he was soon after adopted out to a family up there. After that, we thought that would be the mission to save the dogs that were about to be put down in some of the county shelters in the area. Got a little hairy at one point because we probably had about 6 or 7 dogs in our living room, and my wife politely told me we needed to find another way to accomplish our mission. So we decided to become a fundraising organization at that point. What we actually do with the proceeds of the sales of our different businesses is we partner with rescue agencies throughout southeastern North Carolina that pull the dogs for us and then foster the dogs for a very short amount of time. While this all takes place, we fund the veterinary care that the dog or cat may need, and we fund the transportation costs to get them to a safety organization that has committed to not euthanize them. Those organizations then adopt the dog out and foster them long-term if needed. We have been successful through this strategy of pulling dogs that nobody really else wants to take. We opened the Thrift Shop here in Leland. I opened it 3 days a week, and it was just me. And at the time I was teaching through Cape Fear Community College, and I figured I would grade papers while we were in the store because it was going to be so slow, of course. Little did we know, the local community really embraced our efforts, and the shop took off. We moved from 1,000 square foot store to 2,000 square feet. We soon opened 7 days a week, and we started to make a decent amount of money where I could start to save 1 or 2 dogs a month, which didn't seem like a lot at the time, but our efforts were starting to be fulfilled. Fast forward now, we're still a small organization, but we have about 4,000 square feet of rental space. We save about 2 dogs a week, so we've really grown the organization. We're still nowhere near the size of 11th Hour Rescue up in New Jersey, but we're growing. Right now, we probably have about 10 people on staff, and we have an additional 10 people that do our online sales for us. Our organization really makes money 3 different ways. One is through our thrift shop. When COVID hit, we had to close up the store, obviously, for a month. We decided to do a test where we would sell things on eBay and Amazon. That grew substantially. The kindness of our donors has been incredible. From people that drop things off at our store to the volunteers that we have working within our stores to organizations that have come forward that have helped us raise money in our events business. We have a group of volunteer comedians that run events for us from time to time. We also have another organization called the Hired Hands Band, and they're going to be doing live events in our event room located at our thrift shop in Leland. And all these people have generously donated their time to help our cause, so we appreciate every last one of them, and that's how we seem to be experiencing such growth, is just the number of people coming forward with their talents and applying it towards our mission. Just keep thinking of how we can scale these efforts, how we can make them bigger, how we can get more people involved, how we can open another thrift shop, how we can take saving 2 dogs a week to saving 20 dogs a week. We have a huge pool of talent that works within this organization. What I'm hoping to do through this series is give other rescues a chance to speak and meet with those people so they too can learn how to bring in those revenues. It might seem overwhelming to open an animal rescue because there's so much that has to be done. You have to run the kennel, you have to fundraise, you have to adopt out the animals, you have to save them from the shelters that can't take care of them anymore. And sometimes maybe it might be a better strategy to just take one piece of that puzzle and help all the other people out in the community to accomplish the bigger prize.